So if you've had the good fortune of stumbling upon this video, chances are one of your friends has probably told you, hey, there's this new movie coming out, it's called Black Widow, it's part of the MCU, I'm really excited about it after Spider-Man Far From Home, let's go see it. And if you're watching this video, you're probably like, wait, what? And that is because you have no idea what the MCU is. Well, have no fear, friends, because the next time one of your friends says, hey, let's go watch an MCU movie, you're gonna know exactly what they're talking about, and I'm gonna explain it all in today's video. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Access Blockbusters, and this is the beginner's guide to the MCU. So the first question that I want to answer before I get into anything specific about Marvel, the Avengers, and Endgame and Infinity Wars is, who is this video for? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. This video is for people who have no idea what the MCU is, or even just have a vague idea of what the MCU is and want to start watching the movies, but really don't know where to start. What do I look for? What order do I go in? I thought there were XMen movies. I saw a Spider-Man movie in 2004. Again, fear not, all of these questions will be answered and so much more, and you will be well on your way to being a true Marvel Cinematic Universe fan. Now, for those of you who are watching who basically know everything about the MCU and know exactly what I'm talking about, well, stick around and, I guess, judge me based on how well I do with this information, and let me know in the comments if I did a good job. But also, on top of that, if you have friends who have been asking you these questions before, then please feel free to send them this video link and show them exactly what they need to know before watching the MCU. Trust me. The reason that I'm making this video in the first place is because over the past year during the pandemic, I have gotten so many questions from friends who have sort of heard about Avengers films and maybe seen one or two like Captain America Civil War, and said, yeah, I'm kind of interested in watching the MCU, but man, that's a lot of movies, or I don't even know who they are, I don't know what order to go in, I'm already behind, might as well just skip it. And you know what I say to that? Well, basically I give them an entire explanation that takes 3 hours, and then I have to repeat that explanation for every single friend, and it's exhausting. And so I decided, let's just make one video, hopefully that's not too long, that explains everything that a person needs to know before going into the MCU, so that everyone out there can enjoy these movies and shows as much as I do. Yes, there are TV shows, we will get there. This video will also not contain any spoilers in terms of me talking about them and in terms of footage for the Marvel Cinematic Universe films. I will be only using trailers for the footage that you see behind the audio. There will be no clips from the films, I am not going to spoil anything, and I will also be cutting out footage from the trailers that spoil previous movies, so do not worry, the trailer footage that you are seeing in this video should not contain any major spoilers for any of the MCU films. And with that, cue the Marvel logo. Okay, well, I lied. I'm probably going to get copyrighted for showing more of that music, so yeah, that's probably all you're going to get, but trust me, by the time you're done with all 23 of the Infinity Saga films, what's an Infinity Saga? I'll explain in a second, then you'll probably be sick and tired of hearing that intro music and seeing that intro logo. Or maybe you'll enjoy it like I do. Who knows? Alright, let's start at the beginning. So maybe you've been hearing me talking for the last few minutes and been going, wait, what is the MCU? I heard about the Avengers and I know Spider-Man, but what is an MCU? Well, the MCU is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, Marvel is a company that owns a lot of superhero properties. You have the X-Men, you have the Fantastic Four, you have the Avengers. At this point in time, the MCU doesn't necessarily own every single superhero that Marvel Comics does. However, they have most of them, but it wasn't always that way. And that's why you're going to see other films that were made by other studios that also have Marvel characters. We'll get to that later. And no, the Marvel Cinematic Universe does not include Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. That is the DC EU and DC Comics. I can make a separate video about that, but that is not Marvel. So no, Batman is not showing up in the Avengers. The second question is, okay, well, what movies are included in the MCU? I'm glad you asked. There are 23 films included in the original Infinity Saga. Marvel is continuing to make movies, and there's going to be more and more of them as the years go on, and that's probably why you're watching this video, because Black Widow is going to be the 24th, but we'll get to that later. For now, let's just operate on the base assumption that there are 23 MCU movies in what we're going to call the Infinity Saga. Now, those 23 films are, and I'm probably going to end up repeating this at some point in the video, but just so they're here at the beginning and you can come back and reference them, this is the order in which they were released. Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America the First Avenger, The Avengers, Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Age of Ultron, Ant-Man, Captain America Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, Avengers Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, Avengers Endgame, and Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, these are the 23 movies in the MCU Infinity Saga, and they started in 2008 and ran until 2019. Then, because of the pandemic, Marvel took a break and didn't release any content until early 2021, which is starting Phase 4. Now, what is a phase? Why is it Phase 4? Let me explain. Basically, the way that Marvel has decided to split up their movies, and it's not necessarily important to the overall enjoyment of the MCU, but it is something that might be good to know, is that they are splitting their movies up into phases. So Phase 1 and Phase 2 and Phase 3 all sort of have a distinctive storyline while all connecting with each other at the end. And generally speaking, the end of the phases end with an Avengers movie, or at least sort of end the whole storyline with an Avengers movie. They might not actually end on the Avengers movies themselves, but they basically and thematically end with an Avengers movie. So Phase 1 goes from Iron Man to the Avengers, Phase 2 goes from Iron Man 3 to Ant-Man, but it sort of effectively ends with Avengers Age of Ultron, and Phase 3 goes from Captain America Civil War to Spider-Man Far From Home, but again, it effectively ends with Avengers Endgame, and you'll see that as you go along and watch the movies. Alright, so you have the movies all laid out for you. Now, another question that's been frequently asked to me is, well, wait a second, there's Iron Man and Captain America, but they have their own films, but they're appearing in each other's films. Like, why is Iron Man and Captain America Civil War? Because it's a Captain America film. How is that happening? Pretty simple, actually. And the way that I think is best for a new person to the MCU to sort of envision how all of this sort of fits together is think of the MCU as a very, very large TV show. In TV shows, you have different episodes, and these episodes don't necessarily connect to each other a ton, but they have an overarching storyline usually, right? And the characters will sort of recur in each other's episodes, and you'll have main characters, and they'll all sort of culminate in the finale. Avengers Endgame was essentially a TV series finale to the Infinity Saga, which again is the first 23 movies of the MCU. Again, Spider-Man Far From Home is sort of the ending of the Infinity Saga as well, but people sort of think of it as an epilogue. So Avengers Endgame is effectively the season finale. And so if you think of it like that, then it makes more sense, right? Iron Man 1 is the first episode in this long Infinity Saga, and that's why Iron Man can appear in other people's films, and it all culminates in Avengers Endgame. Now, another question that you might be asking is, well, what order should I watch the movies? Should I watch them strictly in release order, or should I watch them in chronological timeline order? Because there have been chronological timelines of the MCU that have been put out. If this is your first time watching the MCU, and I'm going to assume it is, do not watch it chronologically. Watch it in release order. And there's a very simple explanation for that. It's because some of these movies are designed, yes, to fit in chronologically at a certain place in the timeline, but also to be seen at a certain year. For example, and I won't get into why, because that's kind of a spoiler, but kind of not because of the trailers. But anyways, Captain Marvel was released in 2019. Chronologically in the timeline, it doesn't fit in that exact same place. But it makes absolutely no sense to watch Captain Marvel chronologically because then she doesn't appear for like 15 movies and you're confused because, wait, where did Captain Marvel go? So again, just watch the films in that order that I gave you. Release order. Another question that people ask me about watch order, should I skip The Incredible Hulk? Just kidding, nobody asked me that, but the answer is yes. Okay, maybe it's not. I'm a little conflicted. And I'll get into why, because The Incredible Hulk is sort of the odd man out of the MCU. So you get to Iron Man, you finish Iron Man, you're like, great, the MCU, I'm on a roll. Then you watch The Incredible Hulk and you're like, oh, this is different. And then you get back to Iron Man 2 and you're like, oh, we're back to Iron Man. What happened? For reasons that are probably way too boring for you guys, it's just complicated with rights and things, but they recast the Hulk anyways in the Avengers, so they have Edward Norton, the actor, playing Bruce Banner, who is the Hulk in the Incredible Hulk movie, but then they just basically recast him as Mark Ruffalo in the Avengers. So basically just don't worry about it. Here's what you need to know about the Incredible Hulk. He gets angry, he turns green. That's about it. Now, on the other hand, I would also say if you have the time to watch all of the films, then probably go ahead and watch The Incredible Hulk. I know a lot of people on the channel really like the film. I personally don't, and I also think it's a very clear odd man out of the MCU, but hey, if you have the time, I myself am a completionist, and I love to complete things, so I would recommend watching The Incredible Hulk, but if you really, really don't want to, and I guess what's one less movie out of 23, right? Then probably skip The Incredible Hulk. Alright, so now we've established a watch order, and you can go on your merry way and finish the MCU, right? Hold on a second. There are a few other things that I think are very, very important to talk about before you go on your merry way and start watching the MCU. Okay, first of all, TV shows. Wait a second, I heard of this Vision Wanda thing, or Winter Falcon and Soldier show. What's going on? Should I be watching these TV shows? The short answer is no, not yet. If this video does well, and by the way, Quick break in the video, but if you haven't subscribed already, please make sure to do so and support this video. I would very much appreciate it. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments down below whether or not you want a part 2 to introduce you to Phase 4. But all of that aside, don't worry about the TV shows, because right now, the TV shows are part of Phase 4. Like I've talked about, Phase 1, 2, and 3, you go from Iron Man 1 all the way to Spider-Man Far From Home. That's Phases 1 through 3, and currently Marvel is in Phase 4. Now, whenever you catch up to the end of Phase 3, then, if there's a part 2 to this video, I will be talking all about Phase 4 and how to approach that. But the other really important thing before you go and watch these movies, and this is something that a lot of people don't know and end up getting very confused, and this is a very unique thing to the MCU. In fact, they started this trend that a lot of other films may be doing right now that you may have known from other films, but this really was pioneered by the MCU, which is this: stay through the credits. Now, I understand you're not watching in a theater, so you can probably just fast forward through the credits, but each and every MCU film, almost all of them, have post-credit scenes. That means after the film is done, there are a couple extra scenes, usually 1 or 2, some of them have 3, 4, 5, but there are going to be a couple extra scenes that have very, very pivotal information for maybe the sequel to that film, or maybe other MCU films that are coming up next in the release order, but they are very, very important. Some of them, I would argue, are critical. So please do not forget to watch the post-credit scenes. You don't have to stay through the entire credits if you're just watching at home, but make sure you kind of skim through the credits with your cursor and find where the credits stop and the scenes begin and watch those scenes. They are very, very important. Okay, all of that out of the way. You have the basics down. You know the watch order. You sort of know how to get there. Here are a couple logistical things before we jump into some questions that have been asked to me a lot. Number 1, where can I find these films? Well, pretty simple. Disney Plus. Disney Plus, as the name suggests, has, well, a lot of Disney stuff. And for those of you who didn't know, this might shock some of you, Disney does own Marvel, as well as Star Wars, as well as ESPN and National Geographic and 20th Century. They own a lot of stuff. And Disney Plus has almost all of the MCU films. Almost. As of right now, the recording of this video, and this might change, this might very well change, they do not have Spider-Man Homecoming, they do not have Spider-Man Far From Home. Why is that? That's a whole different can of worms, but long story short, Spider-Man is technically owned by another company, Sony Pictures. Right now, they are in a sharing agreement with Marvel Studios to share the character of Spider-Man, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Anyways, long story short, Disney Plus doesn't have the Spider-Man films yet. The Disney Plus streaming service also doesn't have The Incredible Hulk, and just skip it. If you can't find, just skip it. So if you can't find Spider-Man Homecoming or Spider-Man Far From Home, they're probably somewhere out there. You could probably purchase them and rent them online, but the rest are on Disney Plus. This is not an ad for Disney Plus, but if they want to sponsor this video, I would be more than happy. But yeah, they're on Disney Plus. All right, let's now get into some frequently asked questions, and basically all of them are in the form of, wait, what about this? What about this? I thought this was Marvel, so let's just answer them all. First question, wait, what about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? I saw that show and I really liked it. Is that part of the MCU? The answer is, no, I think. It's kind of complicated. So essentially, technically, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. takes place after the first Avengers film. And I think for a time that they really were connected to each other. However, at a certain point, the MCU proper, which is, again, the 23 films currently released, they basically decided to ignore Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. sort of tried to pretend it was still part of the MCU, and then towards the later seasons it really wasn't. So again, I'm gonna say no. So do I need to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to understand the MCU? The answer is no. Can you? Yes, and start after the first Avengers, because otherwise it's gonna make no sense, because again, at the beginning they are sort of connected, but other than that, I wouldn't recommend it unless you have that much extra time, but again, 23 movies is a lot. Okay, well, wait, what about Daredevil? What about The Defenders? I saw those shows on Netflix. They were really good. And yes, Daredevil is very, very good. But are those part of the MCU? The answer to that is a more solid and resounding no. Again, they were sort of kind of loosely tied together by a couple references, and those references take place after the first Avengers, but again, you can watch those shows whenever you want. They really do not connect to the MCU. However, it's a lot of television. It's good television, but yeah, you have 23 movies to watch. So if you want to see some stuff afterwards that's maybe not related to the MCU, but also very good Marvel superhero stuff, then Daredevil. Highly recommend on Netflix. But no, it is not part of the MCU. Okay, well, hey, what about Agent Carter? Because I saw her in a Captain America film, and I know that's part of the MCU. So what about Agent Carter? Is that part of the MCU? I think so, yeah. Do I need to watch it? I don't think so, no. Because while it is part of the MCU, and you can certainly watch the TV show after you see her first in Captain America the First Avenger, it is not necessarily pivotal to your understanding of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I myself have not seen the majority of the show, and I am, well, I think very well versed in the MCU, I'd like to say. So I would say it is technically part of the MCU, but it's not very much referenced throughout the movies, and I think if you don't have the time, don't watch it. Although I hear it's very good, so if you do have the time, then yeah, go for it. Knock yourself out. Okay, well, wait a second. There are a bunch of X-Men films, right? Aren't X-Men part of the MCU, or are they part of DC? Well, okay, X-Men are part of Marvel, yes, but they are not part of the MCU. Yet. It's complicated. Long story short, basically Marvel was broke back in the day, and they had to sell off a ton of their characters to other studios. They sold off Spider-Man to Sony, and the X-Men to Fox. Back then, 20th Century Fox was not owned by Disney, right? So they went and made a bunch of X-Men films. But then in the grandest of plot twists, Disney actually did decide to buy 20th Century Fox, which included all of the X-Men and Fantastic Four. So now Disney does have the rights to X-Men and Fantastic Four, but they are not going to be continuing those stories. So those stories that ended technically with the New Mutants in 2020, but the X-Men saga ended with Dark Phoenix, I believe, in 2019. Those will not be continued. So you will not be seeing James McAvoy or Michael Fassbender as those characters, Professor X and Magneto, again. I think. Things might get kind of weird with Phase 4, but I don't want to talk about that right now because that's just going to be confusing. So if you finish Phases 1 through 3, come on down to Part 2. If there is a Part 2, again, please subscribe and give this video a like to let me know you like this. And we'll talk about Phase 4 and the X-Men and Spider-Man. But yes, those films, X-Men, X2, X-Men The Last Stand, X-Men Origins Wolverine, First Class, Days of Future Past, Logan, Deadpool, those will not be, well, okay, pause. Most of them will not be a part of the MCU. The only two films that might eventually be relevant to the MCU are Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2. It's very complicated, and again, I won't go too much into it, but for right now, unless Marvel announces Deadpool 3 is coming out tomorrow, I wouldn't worry about it too much until you finish Phases 1 through 3. But eventually, you might need to watch Deadpools 1 and 2, or maybe not, depending on... It's complicated. Just keep that in the back of your mind. And the same goes with the Fantastic Four. Those old movies are not going to be relevant because Marvel is rebooting the franchise and making their own Fantastic Four as well. And that's coming out probably in 2023. Okay, well, hang on a second because you've been talking about Spider-Man a lot and I saw those old Spider-Man movies, right? With Tobey Maguire and then Andrew Garfield came out. Wait, so are those relevant? Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. As of the recording of this video, they technically are kind of relevant to the MCU. Here's the thing. So Phase 3 of the MCU ends with Spider-Man Far From Home, which is the second MCU Spider-Man film. There will be a third MCU Spider-Man film called Spider-Man No Way Home coming out in December of 2021. For reasons that I will not be explaining in this video because it is just much too complicated, and I've already dumped a ton of information on you anyways, don't worry about it right now. But if you're able to finish the MCU proper, the Infinity Saga, and start Phase 4, before Spider-Man No Way Home, then hopefully in the part 2 of this video, please be sure to subscribe and like this video and let me know you want another one. But then you might want to go back and watch Spider-Man 1 through 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. I'm pretty sure at least 3 out of those 5 films are going to be very important. I'm pretty sure. Can't explain now, but no, technically those films are not part of the MCU. Okay, well, hey, there's this trailer for this movie called Venom: Let There Be Carnage, and I saw a Marvel logo on that trailer. Is that part of the MCU? Yeah, in relation to that whole Spider-Man debacle, I'm gonna say the answer is no right now, but talk to me in a little bit because it very well may be a part of the MCU at a later point in time, retroactively. Things are gonna get really weird in Phase 4, so just don't worry about it right now. You don't need to see Venom 1. If you want to watch Venom 2, go for it, but I'm pretty sure the MCU things are not going to be referenced in it at all. But in the future, things might get a little weird and things might start crossing over. So for right now, don't worry about it. Okay, well, wait a second. There's a bunch of other characters, right? There's like a Howard the Duck film. Wait, there's Punisher, Ghost Rider.
There's an Ant-Man and a Spider-Man?
Yeah, I'll do you one better. Who's Gamora?
Okay. Yes, there are a lot of Marvel characters, and there are a lot of studios that made a lot of movies. So I touched on the ones that seem relevant for now, right? Like Daredevil, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Spider-Man, X-Men, those might eventually become relevant, and that's why I'm touching on them here, because I don't want there to be any confusion that they're part of the MCU, but I also want to make it clear that they are all sort of connected and kind of linked at this point. But there are a ton of other Marvel films out there. There are Punisher films, there are Ghost Rider films, there are Blade films, right? These are all Marvel characters, but they are not part of the MCU. They're out there though, so if you want to watch them, go ahead. But again, I think at this point you are armed with about everything that you need to watch. And let's go over the watch order just one more time, shall we? In this order: Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America the First Avenger, The Avengers, Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Age of Ultron, Ant-Man, Captain America Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, Avengers Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, Avengers Endgame, and Spider-Man Far From Home. In that order. And the final thing I'm going to say about this all, because I think at this point, if you remember the post-credit scenes, you have everything that you need to really enjoy the MCU proper, is this. Watch it with a friend. Specifically with a friend who really loves the MCU. Because trust me, for those of us who have already seen the MCU and been in theaters for those big moments that we just loved and cheered and cried and clapped for, we can't get those back. We can never, ever, ever relive those moments again. But the closest thing for us is seeing that same expression on our friends' faces. That's why these reaction videos are so popular now with the TV shows for Marvel. We just enjoy seeing these things vicariously through other people. And I know 23 films is a lot. You don't have to see every single one with a friend, but Disney Plus has watch features where you can sync it up and watch it together, or you can just watch a couple together. But find a friend who loves the MCU and tell them, hey, I'm embarking on this journey. I want to watch the MCU. You want to watch some of the films with me? And trust me, it's going to make them really happy. And for those of you who are watching this video and have made it all the way to the end and you love the MCU, find a friend who doesn't know the MCU but is willing to try. Show them this video, see if they're interested, see if they want to explore the wide world of Marvel, and have a good time. Because honestly, one of my greatest joys and one of the reasons I make these videos is because I want as many people as possible to enjoy the films that I love so much. But you have to start somewhere. And that is the Beginner's Guide to the MCU. Part 1. Tentatively. Again, thank you so much if you made it all the way to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. And if you want a part 2 where I talk about Phase 4 and how to approach the next coming years of the MCU, please let me know in the comments down below. I am planning on releasing this video right before Black Widow. It should be good timing. I'm super excited to see Black Widow and see where the MCU goes from here. But if you've liked this video, make sure to subscribe and give this video a like. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this kind of video, and I'll be sure to make some more in the future. In the meantime, if you want to check out some more videos and be part of the Access Blockbusters crew, subscribe and check out the videos on the screen right now, and I will see you in the next one.